and welcome to the second instalment of our Averys at Home taste along video series designed to hopefully keep you entertained and informed while you pass a little bit of time at home drinking some wine. In this video we're going to explore the different ways of pairing food and wine together, so making a note of the key components in both the food and the wine that we need to consider in order to make a successful match. I'll be giving you examples of the wines that you can buy or maybe even find in your wine rack so that you can try these pairings at home, as well as the ingredients that you can do your own taste testing with, so you can find out what works for you because every palate is different, and discover how the food and wine combinations can enhance flavours, hopefully creating that 1 + 1 = 3 approach. So the two together elevate the food and wine to another level. Or, on the other side, sometimes 1 + 1 can equal a negative, so the food diminishing the qualities of the wine or the wine reducing your enjoyment of the food because of the interactions between the different components. There is a few things to remember before we get started on the nitty-gritty. So, personally as a food and wine lover, I like to experiment with lots of combinations. I take a lot of enjoyment out of that. I like to plan it, but I do realise that there is a different level of appreciation for everybody. So some people just want a nice wine that's going to go really well with their curry on a Friday night or their pizza night or something just to lift their spirits that goes really nicely and has a little bit point of difference at the dinner table. And other people really want to plan it out and make sure that they're experimenting with new styles, new grapes, new different wine regions, etc. So the important thing to remember here is if you don't like a certain style of wine, then the food isn't always going to change it. So you might just want to start off with, stick with your own preferences and then kind of build your flavour profile from there. It's a really good starting point, but there is always a load of different options normally for different food matches. So if you really don't like oaky wine, for example, then having a food that suits it is not always going to make that wine taste delicious. But at the same time, do make sure you're being bold, so play around with the flavours, and it's a great opportunity to expand your wine horizons, and don't be afraid to taste things that you might have written off in the past. For example, something like Chardonnay, which is incredibly versatile. You might have had some bad examples in the past, but don't let that put you off trying new things. So when you're ready, do take a few steps outside your comfort zone, and it's a great social thing to explore with your friends as well, even if it's just over Zoom. So a good approach is to think of the wine as a sauce that you might want to pour all over the dish to complement it. So thinking roast dinner, and you've got a really nice gravy that's going to tie all of those ingredients together, but it's not going to overpower anything at the same time. So you're matching the strength of the flavours in the wine with the powers of the flavour in the dish as well. So in this respect, we're going delicate with delicate and bold with bold. And it's important to strike that balance between the food and the wine so that one doesn't overpower the other, because you can end up losing the flavours of the wine, the nice qualities, the subtleties of the wine, or you can overpower the food that you've prepared as well. So in this respect as well, you can do a congruent match, so where the flavours mirror each other, kind of harmonise because they're quite similar. So think a buttery, creamy sauce with a creamy Chardonnay, or a fruity dessert with a sweet, fruity wine, or even fish with lemon and a zesty Sauvignon Blanc. So the key components of food that we need to consider are saltiness, sweetness, acidity, spiciness, and umami. So if we look at those in a little bit more detail, we've got saltiness in food, and that complements quite a lot of wines because it can make them more fruity, it can give them a bit more body. It can also make them slightly less acidic and less bitter, so it can reduce the bitter tannins that you might find in certain wines. Sweetness in food often takes away the acidity of the wine and it takes away also the body of the wine, making it appear lighter, and it makes it more acidic and more bitter, which is why it can be a difficult thing to handle and why we normally say sweet food needs sweet wine as a general rule, so that the sugar is balancing each other out in the food and the wine. Acidity in food can often make a wine taste more fruity, and it can make it taste slightly fuller in body, but it can remove some of that acidity in the wine. So this might be good for wines that are high in acidity, high acid food, and the two come together to create something that's a little bit more enjoyable. Spiciness is also quite tricky, so it can make food taste more bitter. It can create quite a burn if you're having it with a high alcohol concentration. So anything 13.5%, 14% up is going to really ramp up the spice that you're having in the food. It can also take away some of the body of the wine, making it lighter and less fruity as well. So you have to be careful with spiciness. Umami is a very savoury flavour, so you think asparagus and mushrooms and even things like Marmite. They can make a wine taste less fruity, more acidic and more bitter. So again, a tricky customer, but it's one that there are still plenty of options to match with. A great default option or a good starting point when you're looking at these components, and if you're stuck and you're just starting out, what grows together goes together is a really, really good way to take your first steps into food and wine matching. So especially when we're talking about traditional winemaking regions, the culture of the food and the wine have kind of evolved together. So think coastal regions like Galicia and northwestern Spain. You've got lots of seafood and really fresh, citrusy wines like Albarino and Gadeo. You could also hop over to Italy, where we've got tomato-rich foods, lots of acidity, and wines that also have a good level of acidity. And think pizza with a Chianti. Really good options there and a great place to make a start.